We're going to spend a little bit of time now talking about sector partnerships and NOCO works. So these are some answers. The whole rest of the day is some answers to some of the things that Dr. Thornburg talked about today. So sector partnerships, how many of you have heard about sector partnerships? If you can raise your hand. Okay, about half of you, that's great. So sector partnerships, in Northern Colorado, we have these 5. And if you looked at some of the slides Dr. Thornburg had in sort of the sectors that are leading in our region, they are those, right? And many of you sitting in the room as I look are members of these sectors as well. So we are also looking at adding financial services in the next few months as well. So we'll have 6 sector partnerships. It is a big part of the DNA in Colorado. And I would tell you that we have almost the most in Northern Colorado at this point. So there's a big investment in the state to add these. Financial services we're launching soon. So the idea is it's more complicated than ever, and it's super hard as a single business to make an impact. And it's much better to come together as an industry, as a construction industry, as manufacturing, as healthcare, with your voice. And think about that conversation that Dr. Thornburg had about the narrative. You can collectively make the narrative about what you're seeing, what's happening. It's super easy to call up Nick Spez at Ames and say, I'm from this industry and I have 3 jobs I need to fill. And Nick says, man, I'd love to help you. That's great. And he tries to work on that with you and gets you connected with his team. Or Janelle Highfill at Front Range, or somebody at CSU. But when you come as a sector partnership together and you say you need 300 positions across 40 employers, that's a whole different narrative, isn't it? A whole bigger conversation. So we can't afford to stay in our own lanes. The work that we're doing, finding more workers, we can't afford to stay in our own lanes. So from the Brookings Institute, inclusive regional economic growth doesn't happen on its own. Somebody has to bring key stakeholders together to do this work. And so the Chamber, along with our friends at Larimer County Workforce, the workforce system in Weld County Employment Services. I could not get that. Sorry, Andy. Missed your name there. And the City of Fort Collins have come together to say what are the sector partnerships we can create and what can we do together. So sector partnerships are regional. So in Northern Colorado, they are Larimer and Weld because that is our labor shed, isn't it? That's naturally where people come. I think there's numbers like 38,000 people drive back and forth on Highway 34 to go to work, back and forth, right? And we learned the other day that there are 7,000 people that drive every day up to Cheyenne to work at the Warren Air Force Base. So our region might be a little bit bigger than we think it is. So bring together public partners from economic development, workforce, education, training, and other community organizations to address their shared workforce and broader competitiveness needs. So next-gen sector partnerships have industry at the center, driving the economy, hiring the worker, telling what needs to happen, and all of these partners at the table, at the ready to help. And kind of a reverse of what usually happens. Sometimes what was happening is our public partners knew we were having trouble in industry and they were creating solutions and then bringing them to us, and as industry we'd say, well, that isn't what we needed. It sounds pretty good, or it was pretty close, or that was so 2 years ago, or that might be 3 years from now. And now it's the industry says this is where we need to go, and everybody's all together doing this work. Think of it as geese. There's always somebody at the front leading where we're going, right? And it's all together with all these partners. Industry is pulling. This is where we need to be. This is where we need to go. This is what I need to have. I need to have more workers in this. I need to have more workers in this situation. I need training that looks like this. A shared table. It's not owned by any single institution. It is a shared table with all of our partners. And we have a great response from education. And I feel like in Northern Colorado, we are very organized. We are pulled together around these sector partnerships. We also started a nonprofit sector partnership. It's the only one in America. And it's interesting to me, and why I said yes to helping them form one is because they also are a workforce. And you all know, and maybe there's those of you in the room that work for nonprofits, it is your career choice. You want to be a nonprofit, and yet there's no career pathways, there's no work, there's no section of that. And we have a lot of nonprofits in our community, and so helping them around this effort as well. So if you hit one of those sector partnerships, we would love for you to know more about that and get on their mailing list. There's no cost to be a part of a sector partnership. There's only the willingness to come and play. So they have a booth. Check out their booth. You can sign up to get on their email list. And if you have a sector that we didn't list that you think, my goodness, we need a sector partnership, you can reach out to Andy Yost at Weld County Employment Services. You can Anna Crow at Larimer County, Jillian Friese at the City of Fort Collins, or myself. So we wanted to give a quick infomercial, commercial about sector partnerships as well, so that you know that that's an effort that's going on, and with loud voices. Right? Loud voices. When minimum wage conversations come up, the hospitality sector partnership decides whether they think that's something to talk about or not. And again, as your individual sandwich shop, that'd be a hard conversation. But when you have many voices together and you tell the narrative in the way that needs to be told, you now can move the dial, right? So great.